Some major news went down in the NBA last night as the Toronto Raptors made a trade. They traded away Khem, a first-round pick, 2 second-round picks to acquire the guy that was widely rumored, widely reported on, Jakob Poeltl. The former Toronto Raptors center is back home. We traded him away in the Kawhi Leonard deal a few years ago that won us an NBA championship, but Masai Ujiri couldn't live without his precious yak back in Toronto, and he made a move to reacquire him. So we'll break that down, as well as Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant getting moved out of nowhere, it felt like, from the Brooklyn Nets to the Phoenix Suns in a massive package. And there's more reports coming out because Adrian Wojnarowski brought up a report regarding OG Anunoby that will have all Toronto Raptors fans' eyes glued to Twitter and Reddit, wherever you're getting your news information, and Raptors Digest, of course, today. So lots of stuff to break down. Without further ado, let's jump into the first topic of discussion, and we're breaking down the Toronto Raptors trade away Khem and picks for Jakob Poeltl. So this is wild. This is insane. I've literally woke up 10 minutes ago. I stayed up late. I was scrolling, refreshing my feed because Jake Fisher, everyone roasts him, but he said a Jakob Poeltl trade could happen during the night. I crashed at about 2:15, I feel like, and then this deal comes out, or the KD stuff. All the drama happens immediately after, but Woj came out with the bombs yesterday, and basically the Toronto Raptors are acquiring San Antonio Spurs center Jakob Poeltl for Khem, a protected 24 first-round pick, and 2 future second-round picks. Now, I haven't even gauged people's reactions to this, but I saw this. I saw the Jakob Poeltl deal, and I got a little bit shook. When I, groggy-eyed, looked at the deal for initially when it happened, I said, oh, we made the trade, because all the rumors, all the reports indicated that Gary Trent Jr. would have to be in one of those deals, and we talked about it on last night's live stream. I didn't want that deal to go down, and then also, there was talks that the Spurs were interested in acquiring Delano Banton in one of these deals along with a first-round pick, and even that scared me a little bit, as Delano Banton feels like the type of guy that, would leave the Toronto Raptors and absolutely blossom and break out, just like so many guys have in recent years. But no, while I'm a big fan of the person of Khem, seemed like a very nice guy, always came to the games professionally, whether he was playing or not, Canadian guy as well, so shout out to Khem. He was on a bad contract. He was a little bit overpaid given all the injuries that he was sustaining deal with. So the Raptors get off of that contract. The pick is a little bit sketchy because, Jakob Poeltl's good. I'm stoked. I'm about to rant about Jakob Poeltl, but 12 points, 9 rebounds. You say a first round pick there, especially given the question marks regarding the Toronto Raptors' current, record at this point. We're barely in the play-in in the Eastern Conference, so trading away a first just 1 year down the line feels a little bit risky, and Masai Ujiri's always given away first-round picks to the Spurs. A lot of people are disappointed with how the trade that happened last season between the Spurs and Raptors ended up turning out for this team, so giving a first is a little bit sketch, but you saw it there, right? A protected first, or I don't even know if that's stated in this. Is this? No, okay. It's a protected first-round pick. That's what the other tweets have been saying. We currently don't know the protections on the deal. We aren't sure how protected it is going to be. But they didn't say lightly protected, as they described the Lakers pick sent to the Jazz yesterday. That was only top 4. So I'd imagine it would have to be lottery protected. I don't see a world where it isn't. And then a couple second-round picks, which for Jakob Poeltl, really, I think that's a nice package. And the reason I'm happy about this deal, because one, Jakob Poeltl solves a major issue for this Raptors team right now. I get that he can't shoot. I get that's why we didn't want to give up Gary, but we keep all of our shooters. We keep the guys already on this team that can knock down the 3-ball, and then we get that center that can reliably play defense in the paint, anchor the defense, and sure, he's not going to be blocking a bunch of shots like Nick Claxton would, who's another guy a lot of people were interested, but in the similar vein of a Marc Gasol, right? He's solid positionally. He can move into that open space, take hits to the chest, not foul, and do a solid job. Now, people have discussed how there has been minor regressions for Jakob Poeltl on the defensive end this year, playing for an abysmal San Antonio Spurs team that's tanking, that hasn't been good, I'd imagine, and the lack of wing defenders around him at that point, right, doesn't make me worried about his minor step backwards on the defensive end this year. The free throw shooting is also a concern for Jakob Poeltl, but other than that, he fills a massive hole for us at the 5. So big ups to Masai Ujiri there, because getting Poeltl back and getting off of Khem Birch's salary, only having to give up a protected first round pick, that's considering the market value. I mean, I know it's hard to gauge off of fandom and stuff, but even Nets reporters were saying that they were hesitant to give up just a Nick Claxton, who, yes, is younger, but is only putting up similar stats to Jakob Poeltl, right? They were saying, oh, he'd have to be in an OG or a Pascal Siakam trade. So the fact that that's the going rate for centers at this point, this is a massive steal for the Raptors. Now, even though Jakob Poeltl is in the final year of his contract, so he could be an unrestricted free agent this summer, that's something the Raptors will have to manage, because now we have Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., and Jakob Poeltl, who could all be free agents this summer. We'll be discussing all of that today. I'm initially reacting to all this stuff, but let me know what you guys think about this Jakob Poeltl trade. We have bigger news that came out last night as Kevin Durant was traded to the Phoenix Suns. Now, the Toronto Raptors and Phoenix Suns were two teams that were going back and forth all this entire summer about potentially acquiring Kevin Durant. And while the Raptors had a different route, the different direction they went this season, and the lack of depth caught up to us, the Phoenix Suns, they got their wish. They got their way. And they sent a blockbuster package to the Brooklyn Nets to acquire Kevin Durant. So Woj coming out saying the Suns are nearing a blockbuster trade. The deal ended up going down that acquired Brooklyn Nets star Kevin Durant, and KD wanted to move to the Suns, and the Suns owner was making a push for it. So that was the big Woj bomb that came last night. The full details of the trade are that the Nets received Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, 4 first-round picks, and a pick swap for Kevin Durant and former Phoenix Sun TJ Warren. So that is a wild deal. And this is shocking to see, because we didn't hear anything. Now, I broke it down on Courtside Digest, the possibility of it actually happening, because once again, Brian Windhorst, what's going on in Utah? He was talking yesterday about how a deal could potentially be going down. There has been traction, there has been movement within the Nets organization to potentially get rid of Kevin Durant. So that is a shocking deal. Now, this is interesting because it shakes up the Eastern Conference, especially because the Nets probably will fall down a rung or two. Maybe not. They acquired a lot of good players over the last 3 days, getting rid of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. They also have a lot of draft capital now at this point, and the Nets aren't really in a position to tank at this point because a lot of their picks are going to the Houston Rockets. So, they're going to try to acquire as many assets, as many pieces as they can. What does this mean for the Toronto Raptors? 1, you have a different looking division rival. 2, a trade partner that you've been talking with in recent weeks and, or recent days, especially since the Kyrie Irving trade has gone down. They are potentially more apt to try to acquire a guy that will put them over the top because they want to win now, given how the players that they've brought back. Yes, they trade a bunch of draft capital, but I don't think they're going to go in the route of tanking, and they don't have a KD. So maybe they'll give a Godfather offer for Siakam OG. I don't know about that, but the Suns are definitely in a position in the West. And the big way that this affects the Toronto Raptors, that's just some mild, high level stuff, but Woj breaks it down pretty deeply. They give a deep look as we have a massive OG Anunoby Adrian Wojnarowski report. Before we dive into that, I do have to quickly pay the bills. As shout out to CoolBet, as they've sponsored this podcast for the last couple of months here now. They're a sportsbook regulated in Ontario, available all across Canada, and you can bet on the Toronto Raptors games, NBA games, and really anything in general regarding sports. They had a lot of bets surrounding this year's trade deadline, so if you had it on your notebooks, it was a while back that Kevin Durant going to the Phoenix Suns, then made some money on the CoolBet app. They had a lot of interesting futures, and they have a lot, for the NBA playoffs this year, just games in general, different parlays. So shout out to CoolBet for supporting the podcast. If you do enjoy sports betting, if you're into all that, use the link down below. But we got to get to this Adrian Wojnarowski update. And for people that don't know, Woj is the guy. He's the guy that you go to when it comes to potential trade news. And he had a big one coming out regarding OG Anunoby. As a report came out that talks on forward OG Anunoby are rolling in to the final hours of the NBA trade deadline. The landing of Kevin Durant with the Suns could escalate OG Anunoby's value amongst Western Conference teams pursuing an elite forward to defend Durant. So OG Anunoby, the KD stopper, and I made a whole video this weekend about why the Kyrie Irving deal was bad for the Toronto Raptors, because my assumption that KD was not going to get dealt. So KD was the big name on the market, and teams would hold their assets trying to potentially maybe acquire him this summer, but the tables have turned completely, because now that KD is dealt, one, teams are going to become way more desperate, as Woj indicated, to match up with him on the wings out there in the Western Conference. And a bunch of the teams that are rumored for OG, whether it be the Memphis Grizzlies, whether it be the Portland Trailblazers, whether it be the New Orleans Pelicans, who have especially been talked about. Now the Golden State Warriors, I've heard some chatter and rumors about in the 5 minutes that I was on Twitter this morning. But there's an arms race in the Western Conference right now, and teams are going to need to load up on wing defenders. So OG is the best guy available right now. Still, even though the Raptors made a trade for Jakob Poeltl, I think that's a win now move. I don't think Masai Ujiri is looking to tank at this point, but trading OG for some young players and some draft capital, I think he's trying to retool, and OG does want a bigger role. He's a guy that's under contract for next season, so getting off of his money makes it easier to bring back Fred, Gary, and Jakob Poeltl. So I could see a deal going down, especially given OG's injury history, given how well he's played this season, the offensive and defensive end, given the now perfect world in terms of a trade market that is desperately in a bidding war to acquire a guy like OG Anunoby, this is the time to trade OG if you're going to do it, if you don't think you can or if you can give OG what he wants in terms of a bigger role with the Toronto Raptors. So does this make a window? I think we still go in the direction of younger players and guys that fit that Scotty Barnes timeline, but I think it's going to be more so a player-based trade rather than a draft pick-based trade, which honestly, I'm very cool with. If Masai Ujiri can evaluate prospects and guys that will develop into good players, earlier on the timeline rather than having to wait and, rebuild more so than retool, I'm very much cool with it. And just given all the context to OG Anunoby's mild trade request or desire to be in a role where he has more of the ball in his hands, I'm cool at this point if we do get rid of him. But if we don't, again, I've been on the stance that if we don't want to deal OG, I'm very happy with him staying. He's one of my favorite players. He's an elite guy, elite two-way player. And with Jakob Poeltl there, maybe that's a better situation. But I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. If there's gonna be a Godfather offer for OG, it's gonna be wild. But we have that. And the final bit of news for this morning at least, is Kyle Lowry's likely getting traded today as well. As reports have come out, Kyle Lowry didn't show up to Miami Heat's game last night. They mutually there's a Heat beat reporter that said that the Heat and Kyle Lowry fallen out a little bit, and regardless if Kyle Lowry gets traded or not, he likely won't play much for the rest of the season. So things are not looking too good for the Raptors' growth. And one thing I thought about is if he does get bought out, I would absolutely to bring back Kyle Lowry as a backup point guard on this current contingent of Raptors team. Like, Kyle Lowry as a backup for us right now would be an insane upgrade over Malachi Flynn. I know Lowry's not having the greatest season, but if he gets bought out, we could bring him in on a minimum or a low tier contract. That's money for the Toronto Raptors. I don't know. That's just a pipe dream I'm throwing in at the end, but it's likely the relationship between the Heat and Kyle Lowry is strained at this point. So I have wishful thinking at this point. But folks, let me know what you guys think about everything that's gone on in the NBA today. We'll be covering everything, so subscribe to the Raptors Digest. Lots of news going to be happening, but appreciate everyone. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with everything. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.